AWP Voices, your people promise in action.
Hello, I'm Steve Walker and welcome to We Are AWP Voices. Joining us today is Emma Wharton-Love, Chief Executive Officer of Sparks AI and one of AWP's non-executive directors. We're also pleased to be joined by Dr. Olga Dos Santos, Head of Psychological Therapies and a consultant clinical psychologist here at AWP. We'll be touching on International Women's Day 2025. The theme for this year is #Accelerate Action. So Emma and Olga will be sharing their career journeys and experiences with us and also providing some top tips for the next generation of female leaders. If I can start with you, Emma, could you briefly describe your role as Chief Executive Officer at Sparks AI, and could you give us a bit of an insight into how you got to where you are at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I've had a very squiggly career, as they call it. So Spark is an AI consultancy. We do AI upskilling and consultancy to help businesses work out how what they do might evolve in a world with AI like we're in now. I set up Spark about a year ago, and it pivoted out of a design and branding agency that I had before. So I work mainly with creative businesses because creative and marketing functions are the kind of first areas that are feeling sort of a difference with AI being in the world sort of first. But before that, I spent a long time as a civil servant. Spent 15 years working in Cabinet Office and Parliament, and I led major construction and interior design projects. So the Palace of Westminster refurbishment I worked on, and I led the flexible working policy in government and Parliament too. So it was, a fantastic part of my career. So I've done all sorts of stuff, and I kind of just have a curious mind and like trying new things.
So Olga, you're a consultant clinical psychologist and head of psychological therapies here at AWP.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about your role and how you got to your current position?
I also feel like I have an unusual route to come into head of psychological therapies. But essentially, my role involves ensuring that there is quality assurance in the delivery of psychological therapies and interventions, and offering strategic direction to ensure that we are operating with evidence base and offering good quality of care for the South Coast locality. And I came into psychology because I became interested in understanding the ways that people work. And through doing my undergrad, I realized that there is very little understanding of me and how people like me, so marginal people that are from the global majority, function. So that's how I got into psychology. And part of that was the possibility of being able to develop more inclusive psychological services, theories. And then I got into leadership because somebody actually that was outside of psychology phoned me and said, I think you ought to take up this new opportunity. And often that's how women get into leadership roles, because we often don't feel that initial confidence in getting into leadership roles. And partly that also, then the next bit that was crucial was having the support to access leadership training for more marginalized people in the trust, that then, because the trust has had an interest in supporting staff and women in particular into leadership positions. So that's how I come to be here.
Fantastic. It's a great story.
Thank you. Yes, and I saw you nodding, Emma, when Olga was talking about confidence. So do you feel that's an issue sometimes?
Huge issue. I mean, I don't think, not necessarily for every woman, but for many women, I think, more than men. I think it's really interesting that someone phoned you up and suggested that you should do it, and they saw it in you, but you needed that assurance that to go for it and to go for it confidently. It really resonates. definitely in myself, and see it in so many colleagues from the past. Yeah, I think partly it's in just recognizing that is a thing, and that perhaps right now, at the point we're at in society, that women might need to be suggested that actually this might be a great role for you, rather than sort of just putting a job advert out there and expecting people just to go for it and to get that proper representation. I don't know whether it is just a sort of innate thing that women have less confidence, or if it's a societal thing. Yeah, I think I think something really tangible we could do is just suggest things proactively more from our managers, our peers, and our people who work for us can suggest things. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we know from literature and research that women, because of our socio roles and ideas and how we've been socialized in gendered ways, and we know women at work often are very competent. But what organizations value and overvalue often is the presentation of confidence. So women often have higher levels of competence and lack the confidence to go up and apply for leadership positions, which whereas men tend to often present with a lot of confidence, but actually the levels of competencies are often lower than women when they are applying for leadership positions. And we've been socialized out of being seen as worthy leaders.
Yeah.
And that is keeping women from being able to apply and to see themselves as leaders. So in that sense, organizations need to be really intentional in supporting, encouraging, and developing women for leadership positions.
I guess as line managers, if they're having their one-to-one session with you or with their staff, saying, actually, there's a role I've seen, why don't you go and apply? Or perhaps it's not even applying, it's perhaps saying, well, you might be interested in this role, we value you, we don't want to lose you, but actually, we think you'd be really good at this. Why don't you perhaps just give the manager a ring and have a chat, and then, and sometimes, often you find if you ring somebody up, you might get more of a chance. They might remember you when they see your application, and it might also allay some of your fears that actually somebody says, like Olga says I can do this, or Emma says I can do this, but can I really do it? And I guess if you ring somebody up and say, well, I can do a bit of this, I don't have all of this, but I think I might be able to learn parts of it on the job and develop, then it's a good starter for 10.
I think so. I think that kind of mentoring approach as a manager to help your team develop is really valuable, particularly for women in progressing. Yeah, that would have made a huge difference to me in my career, I think, if I had someone doing that.
Yeah, mine too. And it's interesting that you say that, because in psychological therapies professions, where you have 82% of the profession is comprised of women, and yet when we look at leadership posts, often you'll see men becoming heads of profession, doing a lot more of the leadership, and that's partly to do with that how ingrained the ideas of where women should sit are. So having role models is also important, and having women role models, having managers and service heads that are very intentionally developing the female staff for leadership becomes important. And as you were talking, when I started this role, and part of my role involves doing a lot of training, lots of women started coming to me, and some Black and brown women coming to me and saying, actually, you don't know this, but you really inspired me, because until I saw you teach, I didn't really think that I could do a role as a therapist, or I could do a role as head of service. So just having people out there that are visible, are in themselves really is in itself really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then mentoring is also important. And I think we overlook mentoring. Both formal and informal structures for mentoring can be really useful too.
It's like the importance of kind of women's networks as well. So women supporting women, it kind of like overlaps with that role modelling and mentoring. Like it doesn't need to be formal. Like formal mentoring is brilliant through your line manager, but also that informal stuff through your peers doing other roles in the organisation and what their experience is, and the kind of reverse mentoring or the informal side of that. But having sort of women supporting women is inspiring and shows you what you can do. And I don't know, I always find it allows me to be more brave and than I might have been without it. You feel you've got other people who've got your back in everything.
And do you feel as an organisation like Sparks AI, you're healthier as an organisation because you're fostering that culture of encouraging women to apply for more senior positions and encouraging them to come into what is quite normally a male-driven IT business, and you're encouraging that healthy, and often saying perhaps, yes, you can do it. I can see something.
Yeah.
You just need a bit of help or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're a small business at the moment, but we're growing. I'm very proud that it's female-led. It's actually led by myself and my husband. So we've got
equal balance.
Equal balance and complementary, let's say, approaches. But I'm actively encouraging women to apply, and also neurodiverse people as well. I'm neurodiverse, and AI particularly helps me in areas that I struggled in before. And I think, and also because I work with the creative industries, it has an overrepresentation of people with neurodiversity as well. So it's just a really lovely overlapping of things. So yes,
Thank
in
you.
a short answer. Yeah.
So of course this year for International Women's Day, of course the theme is #Accelerate Action. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of the role of women in the workforce?
For me, I think Accelerate Action is about kind of really just calling out and recognising some of the things that we've already talked about, and the kind of societal norms that are quite entrenched, and how that can cause an imbalance with how women can differently access things that to men, or feel they can have different access to them. So I think a big component of it is recognising and calling it out, and then being able to unpick it and support. And I think only by doing that we can get a kind of a fair representation at sort of decision-making level in organisations, which can be through every level of an organisation. Leadership means many different things. It doesn't just mean being at on the board or something. I think we need to recognise what those barriers are to be able to break them down, to then ensure that women are able to apply for all the different sorts of leadership roles, so that there is that sort of diversity of perspective around whichever table it ends up being. So for me, it's sort of just that really basic level of we've got to recognise things, to break them down, to make things happen, to make the action happen.
Stacey, how about yourself?
Yeah, similar. And working from a NHS organisation point of view, for me, Accelerate Action is to do with actually concrete, more specific actions that can make the employment and the workplace a much more friendly place for women. And for me, the Accelerate Action manifests itself in things like women supporting women. So, for example, we've got a range of staff networks where women can come together. We've got gender equity. We've got the Being Women's Collective that often work together so that there's enough staff support and connectivity where women then start to encourage each other for development.
Yeah.
And in particular for me, over the last 3 years or so, accelerate action in relation to women's reproductive health, health, and developing a workplace where women's physical health, emotional health is recognized, is supported in ways that enhance their possibilities for career progression. Because what we know is that actually reproductive health problems, for example, such as PCOS, fibroids, has such a detrimental impact on a person's ability to function.
Huge.
That women have been reporting that as preventing career progression because it erodes a basic sense of self-confidence. So small actions that can make employment more supportive and the workplace a great place to work.
So what do you say was some of the top benefits of having women in leadership roles in organisations like commercial organisations like Sparks AI and, of course, the public sector as well, like AWP?
I think for me it comes back to having those role models, because I think having someone modelling the thing that you might want to do in a really human way, like not needing to be a superwoman in doing it. I think that's really key. You need to be very human and authentic about it and be transparent about the experience for yourself. I think having those role models is one of the biggest benefits of having women in leadership positions, because it then becomes a sustainable thing, and that you'll continue to have people in leadership positions. But I think also the diversity of thought as well, that you have many different opinions, many different perspectives, and perspectives of people with their different life experiences. Better reflecting in our case at AWP, better reflecting the people that we serve. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Olga?
I think for me, there's lots of benefits of women in leadership. And there is an increase in productivity. There's an increase in actual effectiveness. And there was some statistics around if you have about 30% of women in leadership in organizations, you are more likely be more productive to win contracts. And in the health professions, women, due to their very relational nature, also tend to create work environments where there's more emphasis on relationships. It can become a bit less competitive. And it's just the productivity that we can bring because we work in a much more open and relational manner, which in health organizations and public sector has a really positive impact, given the relational nature of our core work with people in distress, really. So it's really is all round, I think.
I love that the hard numbers are behind it as well. Like it's actually productivity too. Yeah.
But when you stepped up to take on the role of head of psychological therapies for South Gloucestershire, did you feel supported in that leadership role? Or was very much you were on your own?
No, I have to tell you, it's been really, because this is an interesting question. So I felt supported throughout. And supported from the very beginning of the post, because it was quite a step up for me, and that there's support inbuilt in the roles, and I wish people would talk about it more, because one of the reasons that I've often hesitated applying for such higher level strategic posts was because of fears and assumptions that actually I might not have the support that I need. But AWP has been putting in, over the last few years, quite a lot of work to support women into leadership roles. So before I even got to the role, I've had the experience of being, again, supported and encouraged to apply for mentoring, apply for specific leadership training. So I actually have felt very well supported, and both at a professional level, but also at trust level in terms of what the trust inbuilds to support, to have supported me into the leadership role. So I know we can always improve, but my experience has been incredibly positive, actually.
And of course, Emma, you're running a business, but did you have anybody who sort of was your driving force encouraging you to set up Sparks AI?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about this question a little bit before, and I think in my career it's been really varied, but the thing that has really helped me is kind of managers who have been role models and who I have felt like have really had my back, but they've allowed me to go off and lead that thing and allowed me to fail if I, in a safe way, and learn from that. And that definitely has not been every boss I've had, but the ones that I have had like that were the ones that allowed me to get to the point that I feel that I can set out my own business now. But also, like my role here at AWP as a non-executive on the board, this is my first non-executive role, and this is a part-time role. So I've been incredibly supported by AWP to make a success of that and to be my version of a good non-executive director that's aligned with how to get the best out of me and my skills and my character. I've been bowled over by the support of my colleagues on the board, but also from HR in general and training and support. And I mentioned earlier, I'm neurodiverse, so I have to read a lot of papers as part of my role here, and that's a real challenge for me. So there's always an open conversation about accessibility of those papers. I've been supported in many ways, but I think also I mentioned failure. I think I've applied for many jobs that I didn't get, and the confidence can take a huge hit when that happens, a huge hit. But I think in hindsight, applying for those and not getting them made me realise the kind of thing that I wanted to do with my life, which wasn't those things. And so that's what's taken me to set up my own business, doing what I'm doing, because it brings together what I enjoy and what I'm good at.
Has there been anything that's limited your opportunities, perhaps, in the past, Emma, to develop?
It's hard to say in hindsight, because you can't you've only got your own experience that you had. You haven't got this like parallel experience to compare it to. But I think the thing that probably sticks out for me is that when I worked in construction, it was a very male-dominated area, and I was often the only woman in the room. And I was reasonably senior, quite young, or looked much younger actually than I was at the time. And I think that was limiting, because my colleagues didn't necessarily believe that I had the skills to be in the room or be in the conversation because of their unconscious biases. And that perhaps led me to doubt my own abilities as well. It kind of got under my skin and made me think perhaps that I wasn't good enough to be there. And that definitely had a reasonably long-term effect on my confidence. We've been talking about coming back to confidence quite a lot, but I think unconscious biases like that can have a negative impact, and you need to really proactively work on overcoming those. Yeah.
And Olga?
Interesting, similar for me, and different at the same time. So for me, one of the major things that I feel that placed limits on my career progression has been biases within the psychological therapist professions in relation to the ways that models have developed, the ways in which we think about psychological processes that have been rooted in oppression, and models that other cultures. And the problem with that is that it creates a system of hierarchies. And as a woman of color from an African background, that has had an impact on how I therefore am seen in the profession, and the offers for opportunities at times have been limited. And then it takes quite a lot of additional work to then make sense of that, understand it, and work in a way that offsets that. So it's very similar.
It is, but different, kind of reasons. Yeah.
And then there's other things in the workplace, though, in organizations that often limit women in general. So, and I'm just thinking about my own experiences, which probably will match yours and most women's, around things like we need workplaces that are much more open to flexible working, formal and informal flexible working policies that then supports women's parental responsibilities, caring responsibilities. So even small things that I encourage teams to think about is meetings at 3:00, 3 to 5 meetings. Those times that when you have parental responsibilities, you know that you're likely to get a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So developing a work structure where those times you don't have set meetings, that means that those with parental responsibilities will feel less likely to want to do a leadership job, because those are the things that are expected from them. Things like being very explicit in job sharing possibilities, addressing practices in recruitment that really challenges the biases that we have. And that often means that people that are neurodivergent, people with disabilities, will often be seen as maybe not being as capable, or not being the idealized idea of a leader, for example. Paying people the same. Yes. Because gender pay gap is still in existence in AWP, and is still in existence in many industries. Mm-hmm. So all of those are barriers to women being able to do well in leadership roles, or even applying for them. And many of those have been stumbling blocks for me too.
Can I just add one more thing? So, in response to thought about when you were talking about flexible working, I worked in setting flexible working policies for a big part of my career, and so I'm really passionate about it. And there are many reasons why different people need different sort of working rhythms. But the one thing I've always often seen as a sort of there's potential to be penalised for working part-time in parts of your career. It's more often women working part-time for sections of their career, and then you sort of come back and you're expected to do that same role full-time for a period of time, to then sort of almost feel like you need to prove yourself again. And so I think role modelling and things like job sharing is so important. And actually public sector is much better than private sector at role modelling things like flexible working policies and job sharing, but sort of actively encouraging job sharing and making it really easy, helping people find job sharing matches and that kind of thing, not putting the onus so much on the individual to find their job sharer. And I think they can make huge differences.
Well, I guess if you had to think of three things, if you're a woman and you want to be a leader, perhaps in business, what three things would you say are the top things to look to add to your skill set?
Well, I think Olga mentioned it earlier, it's like building strong networks, being part of those networks that are in your organisation, and being very visible at them and making the most of them. I think we can underestimate how helpful it is to have really good connections across an organisation, and in parts that you don't work with, it helps you understand where you might want to go, and where it might be that person there could support you with this thing that you need. And so number one would definitely be just being part of networks, building your personal friendships in an organisation as well. Also building strategic broad skills as well as your sort of deep skills in your specialism, understanding the kind of strategic level stuff, like understanding how the financing works, understanding how the governance works, understanding like the big picture stuff, so that you can work out what you're doing, where that slots into the bigger picture. And that helps you when you're talking to colleagues in different parts of the organisation, because you get then different people's perspectives much more. Those would be my 2 things. I haven't given you 3. So that's 2.
Yeah. Maybe the third thing is confidence. Do it.
Yeah. Backing yourself.
Yes, and believing in yourself.
Advocating for yourself. Yeah. And sometimes it can feel uncomfortable to do that, I think, as a woman. I think things like asking other people their opinion, a bit like going right back to the start of the conversation where someone actually suggested to you that you go for your current role. I think just doing things like that, you can actively ask people, what do they think? Do they think you'd be a good fit for that role? That can really help you build that confidence. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the same question to you, Olga, for in healthcare, if you had to name or list perhaps up to 3 things that you might want to do or add to your skill set for if you want to get into a leadership position as a woman, what kind of things would you say or suggest?
For me, my top tip is to address internalized gender norms that often turn into limiting assumptions that then stops us from going forward into leadership. And for me, that is key, because we all have our own backgrounds, family backgrounds, our cultural backgrounds, our schooling history. And within all of those, often there's lots of norms based on patriarchal views of what women should and should not be doing. And for me, I see this in other people as well as in myself, until we become able to really start noticing what things have we internalized and how is that stopping us. We have our own internal stumbling blocks. So those are the barriers that we set onto ourselves. So for me, that was, once I understood that, realized that, and started dealing with that, I just then developed the second bit, which is that sense of feeling that I have the entitlement to inhabit the role and the position. So then the next thing is about ask for your needs to be met. If you see a job that you think, oh, I'd quite like to do that, how did that person get into that role? Ask people, talk to people. And often women feel more hesitant to ask for things from their managers, ask people to allow them to try new positions, go on secondment. So inhabit the world with a sense of entitlement and don't feel held back by the gender authority gap, I would say. And then maybe the third thing would be similar to yours, just reach out to networks, because you need a lot of support, you need a lot of mentorship in order to successfully inhabit leadership positions. So for me, those are the 3 things that I would say.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank our guests today, Emma and Olga, for taking part in We Are AWP Voices and letting us celebrate International Women's Day. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast this afternoon. And if any of you or your teams would like to take part in the next episode of We Are AWP Voices, then please do get in touch with the communications team. Until next time, take care and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.